For these photos, I was taking inspiration from Cindy Sherman, Dwayne Michaels and Yusuf Karsh. This piece uses the story of a song called A Song About Being Sad by Rex Orange County. It's about a boy who is in love with a girl and it's going really well, and then she breaks up with him or breaks his heart somehow. So the first photo is meant to show the boy's love for the girl. This photo was lit with a really soft light LED panel just on this side of the subject, and this made some really interesting shadows and a really high contrast image. The bloody nose is meant to symbolise how he's hurt on the inside, and I'm actually really happy with how this piece turned out. When you see it in real life, it's really quite impressive. It's a shame that because of the current pandemic we can't do that.
Throughout the mock unit samples, I was inspired by the work of Jmw Turner, as I was drawn to his use of strong colour contrasting starkly against one another to emphasise the difference between light and dark. He also focused repeatedly on sunsets, which I included in this painting. Specifically, I was drawn to his paintings of sunset on water, as his use of warm yellows and oranges create an atmosphere of Pacific gentleness, and I wanted to reflect this in my painting to emphasise my fond memories that went with it. For materials, I used oil, as that was the media that Turner used, so I felt that I could emulate his style more accurately, and I like the way that the paint blends softly together while also maintaining its strong pigment, working well for clouds. I mostly used brushes, however also enjoyed using a palette knife for the first time, as it allowed me to include streaks across the horizon, as well as little details.
This is one of my sample pieces that I created in the process of developing my exam piece. We visited the V&A at the start of this project, where we saw a stunning exhibition by the photographer Tim Walker, and that inspired me to try and produce my own editorial style photo. I created the dress from an existing one I had and attached the longer fabric to it. I chose this piece for my exhibition because it was definitely one of the most fun pieces to make, as I got to use my friend as a model. It was also quite challenging, not only due to the fact that we had to get Olivia 2.5 meters up on a thin beam, but it was also very different to the other pieces I've created over the last 2 years, so it was fun to try something new.
This is my exam sample 2 for GCSE. I was inspired by Thomas Saliot for his extreme close-ups of human features and his delicate use of colours that are not normally seen when the subject is photographed. The intimacy of his work was the main inspiration for this piece. You can see the integrated purples and greens and pinks of the skin, and the way the light creates shadows in the form of the ear, which in the shape itself creates a sense of flow that guides the eye around the piece. What really made this come together was the medium, oil, because it allowed me to blend the colours and work into it, and thus it is my favourite piece.
This image was taken early in the morning in the summer of 2019. It is one of my favourite outcomes because the grass is a beautiful turn at this time of the year and provides a carpet texture to the base of the image. A thin layer of low-lying fog emphasises the sun rays around the tree and sits behind the tree to exaggerate the silhouette. The positioning of the sun not only creates a silhouette of the tree, which highlights the skeleton of the grand structure, it also catches the dew resting upon the threads of grass, allowing a golden glistening effect to be composed.
Jeff Huntington and David Fuchs and Beth Emily both inspired me. I painted with oil on an A3 board. I used oil because I love how nicely it blends, and it doesn't dry as quickly as acrylic, so it leaves a nice, smoother finish. The subject matter is of my granny, half of her now in colour, and half of her when she was a lot younger in black and white. I chose this piece as my favourite sample because I really liked the composition and the meaning behind it. It was also my first time painting in black and white, and I loved it. You can add tone a lot easier, and I just really like how the black and white contrasts the colour half.
I created this work by tie-dyeing the skirt and the bodice, and then I made 100, maybe 200 tissue paper flowers, and I used a belt to tie everything together. I was inspired to do this by the Tim Walker exhibition, in which in some of his photos, he'd combined period and modern items together, and I wanted to try and recreate that in my own piece. For me, it's my favourite piece, and it's the one that took a lot out of me to do.
The inspiration for this piece was obtained from a South Korea-based designer and illustrator, Sugna Park. Majority of his work contains this drip effect on rustic architecture and influenced me in using this style of painting in my own work. The piece was created utilising a variety of watercolour washes that follow the forms presented by the building, along with burnt umber ink accents to highlight specific details of the building, such as the windows and brickwork. I chose to use the school for my subject matter as the historic building itself had a large amount of character and interest due to its bold nature and varieties of levels that the building sits at. This was my favourite piece of the whole course, as it demonstrated to me at an early stage that I could experiment with a variety of techniques to create different effects in my work and combine them in my own style later on in my development.
This piece was inspired by Albin-Gros Didier and Laurence de Maison. Albin-Gros Didier did a photo series to show how people often feel they are drowning in their own lives. For this photo shoot, I used a bath of water and we used my sister's school uniform as the costume. I used her school uniform to show how people can feel like they're drowning and suffocated in their everyday lives due to workload, expectations, and the pressures enforced. Using water to create ripples and ghosts was really difficult, but it created the intended effect perfectly.
For this painting, the artist which inspired me the most was Valerie Hegarty because of her interesting use of mixed media. For my painting, I used oil paint for the top half, and for the bottom I mixed PVA glue with wool and tissue paper and then stuck it on the board to represent the reflections of the trees on the water. Then I melted plastic bags and bottles and integrated them into the painting by sticking them on and then painting over the top with acrylic paint to make them blend in. My subject matter here is the beauty of nature, and by using the melted plastics, I was representing the constricting nature of plastic pollution on ponds and lakes, as well as the duality of nature, which is suggested by the two contrasting aspects of the piece, the top half being calm and smooth, and the bottom half expressing anger and constriction. This is my favourite piece of all because when you look at it, you feel a level of proximity to nature and feel deeply immersed in the painting.
This is my first sample for the mock unit. I was inspired by the artist Kathy Blinn and her artwork called Tipsy Stripes. I chose this artist because she explores fabrics and patterns throughout her artwork, and this was my theme for the mock unit. In the artwork that I was inspired by, the fabric Kathy Blinn uses has large black and white stripes on it, which I replicated with the blue and white striped fabric in my piece. My favourite part of my piece is the wine bottle because I spent a lot of time refining the reflections and looking at how the image is distorted behind the glass. Also, I like the fabric in my piece because I think I successfully created a realistic texture.
One of my 15 mock outcomes. My work for the pieces was inspired by many artists that I've previously looked at throughout my course. For my mock work, I used Photoshop to create my outcomes and then presented them in unique frames. The idea of this piece, and the others, is to show how the ones who we have lost are always with us in spirit, that their memory lives on inside every one of us. This piece is made up of Leslie Duff and pictures of her late husband Bill, and shows their shared memories.
Nathalie Seesaw Rico was a Dutch college embroidery artist. I chose this artist because of how the simple feature of the painting creates a sense of depth and distorts the painting as a whole. A picture that inspired me was her artwork called The Sky, Sea and the Earth, which included the embroidery hoops with many different colours. I used oil paints, fabric, and embroidery thread in order to achieve mixed media and variety. This resultingly is why it is my favourite, because of its many different textures and depths.
The artists who inspired me the most were the Chapman Brothers. I chose them because of wide variety of forms, images and objects in the art piece, presented in incredible details with help of mark making and etching techniques. I also enjoyed that it has levels and bright colors at the back, but more diluted colors at the front, and how there's much bigger objects and smaller ones. I have to use a lot of imagination, which shows exactly the theme of Alice in Wonderland.
My favourite piece from my photography course was the Car Flame Trails one that I took for inspiration from Richard Thompson. I really liked the sci-fi effect his photos had and I wanted to try it for myself. His photos were all in front of Walmart, which makes it more realistic. His Photoshop skills are very good, as it took me a very long time to edit them and get the perfect photograph. This is my favourite piece because it brought me success when I finally photoshopped it correctly and got all the flames different and more realistic. This is also my favourite piece as it reminds me of the movie Back to the Future, which I believe he took inspiration from.